somebody critiquing how I used to train desensitizing to the Tarp. So this is a pretty good one because most people do this still now, and there's a lot of pressure and it's pretty time consuming. It's just going to be me trying to get Winslow's feet on this tarp. So I've have it folded up, which is still a good place to start, is having it folded up and as small as you can make it so it's not as scary. But I really don't need to start with putting his front feet on it. He doesn't need to just step on it. Like eventually, yeah, that's the end goal, but I would like him to kind of interact with it a little bit. He's just kind of avoiding it and kind of getting close to it, but really not, kind of not really paying attention to it. So he might just not necessarily care about it, but he also might be just kind of shutting it out and being like, it's not there, it's not there. So be careful with that. Also, horses can pot this, they can strike at it, they can kick at it. So you got to be really careful with handling the tarp in the beginning with them and then moving it around too. So I'm trying to get like his feet on there, and then I'm trying to get him away from it so that I can go get down and open up the tarp a little bit. And then since he wasn't really doing anything with it at that size, I went ahead and just made it bigger. But if your horse is at all showing any signs that he's afraid of it, I don't recommend doing that. So that was okay. Like I put a little bit of pressure on him, and then when he looked at it, I let go. That's okay. It could be worse. But really, like, see, he's gonna just go away from it. What you're doing with this method that is the biggest mistake is what the goal is to get his feet on it and to get him to cross it. But what you're doing is pulling his attention to him the whole time. You don't let him go away from it. So like when he gets kind of far away, you want to pull him back. If he's not going over it, you keep putting pressure on him by the tarp. And that's the biggest problem is they continue to understand that there's a lot of pressure by this tarp. So it can really scare a lot of horses or can really make them sour to it because there's a ton of pressure and nothing good happens by the tarp. Because they're always, usually there's going to be fear in there anyway, which is going to override that. So they don't want to just step on it because that's the easiest thing to do because that's scary to them. Not all horses, but most. So then not only are they afraid of it, but then there's a ton of pressure on it. So now you have like they really don't want to go near the tarp now. So some horses who don't care about it as much will just go ahead and get on it, but it's not because they're totally accepting of it. It's because there's so much pressure around it that they're like, just leave me alone, I'll go stand on it, basically. So that's going to be your biggest problem with this. What I found to be much easier is just putting some treats on the tarp. And the horse is like, oh, look, it's just a bowl. And then they kind of wander on their own and then they have a positive association with it. Works pretty great. If you want to see that process, go ahead and check out both Atlas and Caster's videos. I do the same thing with them. Works really well. So I'm going to continue to kind of talk about this a little bit. Same kind of thing. Like you usually get the horse right up to the tarp and then they're like, no, I'm not going on that. And then you end up having to send them away and try again. See, like he doesn't want to go on there. So I'm going to pull him back toward it. So again, more pressure by the tarp. He's like, no. So then that's where you get your horses where they're running on top of you and they're pulling away. It's because they really don't want to put their feet on that. And you're making everywhere outside of that really difficult, but they're still afraid of it. So they rather run you over or pull away or rear or whatever than get on that tarp. So Winslow has gotten on the tarp because he's usually a pretty chill dude. Um, but even the more calm horses can also have big reactions to this tarp and really pull away or rear or run you over or something like that. They can kick out on it. It just depends on the horse. So, but really the process of this is okay, everywhere else there's going to be pressure besides when you're on the tarp essentially. That's not going to make them get over their fear of it necessarily. It's just like with the other stuff that we call desensitizing with um, the methods that I've been using in this series is they're just kind of tolerating it. They're not completely okay with it. It's the same kind of thing here. So, I mean, he's not necessarily terrified of it, but he's not comfortable with it because he's not just going and putting his feet on it. He's kind of just shutting down and like, ugh, this again. Like he's just kind of pretending it's not there. So, because he hasn't put his head down to sniff it, he hasn't tried to really investigate it at all. He's not curious about it. He really doesn't want to put his feet on it. So, those are all going to tell me that he's still skeptical of it. Like, he's not displaying like there. Now he kind of wants to look at it. That's better. But he's not showing you that he's very interested and he's not giving you those big reactions that we're used to definitely a horse is screaming like this is not what I don't want to do this. but we can see those, but we usually miss these where he's like kind of avoiding it, doesn't want to look at it, not really in investigating it or interacting with it. Those are all signs that he's not comfortable with this either. So he kind of has his feet on it a little bit. You got to be careful with this too, is because so now I'm letting him stand there and have no pressure, but then it's like as soon as I ask him to go, pressure is happening while he's on the tarp. So it's going to be the whole thing is going to be pressure with having him go over the tarp, basically using this training method. See, he's really trying everything in his power to just kind of skirt around the outside there. And then he finally kind of puts his feet on it. But see, as soon as, like, I only let him stand there for a second, and then I'm like, oh, I want more. Now I want him to go across. But he really is only getting a tiny little break, a tiny little release of pressure, which I should be giving him a much larger one. If I want to use this, he needs to stand there and just let him stand there. Let him stand there for a few minutes. So I'm being very, very clear that I want you to stand on this. The release of pressure comes when you stand on the tarp. Because I'm letting him stand there for a second and then immediately putting more pressure on him because I want more. So that's another factor that can happen with this stuff. And then it was very similar, like when I sent him over the jump. Like, see, he doesn't know what this is, so he's really stepping his feet high. Same thing with the jump. It was, but you can't go left, you can't go right, you can't go backwards, so you have no choice. You have to go over this jump. It wasn't he enjoyed jumping. He very clearly did not, but he just did it because he really didn't have any choice. Again, lots of tail swishing, more tail swishing. See him push his shoulders out and really try to get away from the tarp. So it's not those big reactions that you're used to, and like you're used to seeing the horse being like, oh no. He's still telling you no. It's just going to be a less reaction. So he seems more comfortable going over it to the left than he is the right. And then he gets up to it and then he really wants to skirt around. There he goes, kind of on it a little bit. But yeah, that's kind of the summary of um, this lesson with the tarp, with using a lot of pressure and release with the tarp. There, now he's kind of going over it. And he's pretty chill about this. It's not, a huge battle. It can definitely become one with other horses. You can see some rearing, you can see some pulling and kicking out and stuff like that. But it's the same process. It's just those horses have bigger reactions to this. Okay, yeah, on this side, he really wants to just kind of go around there. Now he's kind of looking at it. That's a little bit better. But if you watch this and then go watch the Mustangs video where I desensitized them to the tarp, it's just night and day. Completely night and day. Like I begin it with it folded up. I put like 2 or 3 like pieces of hay cubes. They eat the hay cubes off, and then they start investigating it. So and from there, they just think of it as a bowl. Like horses aren't afraid of bowls necessarily. Like we don't have to teach them that. Why can't everything just be a giant bowl? And it works out really well. The other thing I would want to talk about with the tarp is be careful that the tarp's not going to get tangled on their horse. Like if you have shoes on your horse, be really careful with that. Make sure that you put something on the end so that it doesn't get caught in their shoe. Or don't let them like paw it excessively if you can. And that goes for using either training method. You really don't want it to be caught on them in any way and then run away and then they think it's chasing them. That would be really bad. So if you want to put sand on the sides or something else heavy to kind of weigh that tarp down, if your horse has shoes, I would definitely do that. But I mean, overall, like he did well. It's just that he doesn't like the tarp. He's doing it, but he's not enjoying it. Like he's just like, all right, I'll do it. But I don't think doing this process, if I were to take him over a different color tarp or a tarp in a different location or a bridge, like this isn't going to transfer to other things. And it might not necessarily transfer to other things with positive reinforcement, but it has a higher tendency to because it's that positive thing. So, like, my horses think this is a bowl, they think all these other similar looking objects are a bowl, and they're like, ooh, there might be things in there. But with this, he might just continue to avoid it, especially in different circumstances and different contexts. So, it's not a one and you're trained forever